sure we're getting the most lethal aspects of what we do front and forward as quickly as possible. And that involves things like Futures Command and TRADOC. And when you merge those things, you have to make sure you're getting rid of things that are redundant and pushing forward things that matter the most. But I'll defer to the chairman.
Well, I've shared that commitment completely, and I share this transformation. What do you see as the fundamental capabilities of this command must develop to ensure that we have the lethality and deterrence necessary to succeed in Indo-PACOM? That's where the future is.
Sure, I'll first echo the Secretary's respect and appreciation for Secretary Driscoll and General George. They are a team, and that's always great to see from a warfighter's perspective when you have such a nested combat pair, if you will, that are driving at the same set of objectives. I think there's clarity, Congressman, in the minds of both the Secretary and the Chief on the need for things like long-range fires in the Pacific. And in order to pay for those, they're making those difficult decisions down the Army Transformation Initiative in order to pay for them.
Well, when we started talking about the Futures Command, one of the things that I was hoping we would do is we would not get a project stacked up on somebody's desk and stacked that high, and when he got down to checking on that, oh, that goes to you, and it goes on top of another, on the bottom of another stack that high. And so we get delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed in certain areas of bureaucracy. I think that is dangerous for our country as we look forward in Indo-PACOM.
Yes,
and that's
sir.
why I asked the question. Another issue that's very important, the department has historically relied on outdated production techniques of energetic manufacturing, which may have remained unchanged since the Second World War. How is the department ensuring that investment in next generation energetics manufacturing, such as AI, machine learning capabilities, and enabling and assurance of quality assurance, robotic-driven load, assembly, and pack, and automated formation processes, a prioritize and transition out research and development that is capable of producing these pathways. In other words, a modern way to load and turn out ammunition in the simplest terms.
We're robustly funding things like DIU, like SCO, like the Office of Strategic Capital, to ensure that commercially available options, other companies are able to compete that traditionally are not involved in procurement at the Defense Department, so that the valley of death is eliminated, and you're able to bring in actual competition and dynamic solutions. Otherwise, ammunition's a great example. It's very antiquated in many cases. We're still making rounds the way we made them after World War II. You have to project out what you want to make, send that signal to industry, and then allow innovators to enter that space so they can bring new technology and rapidly field those new technologies. Otherwise, you're stuck doing it the same way you've always done it.
Sorry, I was going to add some, but I'll hold off if you're going to roll.
You can get a written response to the gentleman from Texas on that. That's a concern to all of ours, is to modernize our manufacturing capability for we can get back manufacturing to the United States. Well, Mr. Cuellar, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, and all three of you all, welcome and thank you for your service. I represent an area from San Antonio all the way to Laredo, the border. In San Antonio, we got Joint Base San Antonio, the largest joint base in the Department of Defense that contributes over $151 billion to the Texas economy. We support 266 mission partners. San Antonio also has the second largest cyber footprint in the nation, hosting the 16th Air Force cyber. And then, of course, the military facilities that are the best in the country also. Along with that, going down to Laredo, the largest port in the country, 9th largest in the world after 8 Chinese ports. Number 9 in the world is Laredo. And my question, Mr. Secretary, has to do with one of your plans, and ask you to, welcome you to San Antonio, let the San Antonio folks come in. It has to do with Army, U.S. Army North and U.S. Army South. I'm not going to go with their missions or critical mission, but what concerns us in San Antonio, both the Democrats and Republican members of Congress and senators, we're concerned that, in setting up a Western Hemisphere Command, which I think it's a good idea, that you move it away from a place like San Antonio, where, we have the infrastructure, the personnel, the community partnerships to work with you on this. And I say this because I think your testimony has about 11,900 troops that are down there working with the homeland, which I support. And keeping in mind what's happening with the cartels in Mexico and other places, I would ask you to, when you look at this Western Hemisphere Command, that you don't move it 1,500 miles away from the border, especially in a place like San Antonio. I think we got a few Texans here that can talk about the rest of the state of Texas, and some wannabe Texans also that can talk about what the facilities we have. But I would ask you to, as you consider this, to keep the command, Western Hemisphere Command in San Antonio.
Well, sir, count me amongst some of the wannabe Texans. Tennessee's close enough.
Hey, we got no state income tax. Keep that.
It's true. I appreciate that concern. It is something that has come up multiple times in conversations with Secretary Driscoll and General George in reviewing their Army modernization plan and consolidation, with the recognition that some of those changes, when we go through a posture review and as we're looking at commands, are going to include some tough choices. Some of that includes ranks and positioning, but you still are going to have, at some level, a south and north bifurcation. The question is where that is headquartered, and we are in an ongoing review on that, of exactly where that will shake out. But I would encourage continue deliberation with Secretary Driscoll. They have been thoughtful about it and will continue to be.
And I understand that there's decisions that have to be made, efficiencies and all that, but just ask you, as you look at that, if we're doing so much investment on the border, and we already got the infrastructure down there in San Antonio and all the support from the other military bases across the state of Texas and the partnership, I would ask you and the Secretary to, to please, before you make a decision, go drink the water, go, feel what we have in San Antonio and the surrounding areas in Texas, to consider that instead of just making a decision by the paper on that. And certainly ask you to consider also the second largest footprint that we have at cyber there in San Antonio, and working with a top cyber university, UTSA there. And of course, the military facilities that we have, which are in the best. And certainly during the Afghanistan and Iraq war, that area was looked. So I just ask that before any decisions were made, consider making a trip to San Antonio and have your folks understand. I know some of y'all have been in Texas before, and would ask you to look at that. So with that, Mr. Secretary, and all of y'all, thank you for your service.
Well, noted, sir, and thank you for your contributions to securing the border, which has been a huge priority for President Trump. We're going to get 100% operational control, and it's because of support from folks like you. Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Chairman Womack.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and my thanks to the to our witnesses here today. Secretary Hegseth, General Caine, thank you from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of this committee for your service to our nation. Obviously, we face a number of challenges and pacing threats across the globe in all domains, and we have to ensure that the joint force is ready to fight and win our nation's wars. So let me begin with General Caine. What risks do the recent force structure changes or proposals in the Army and Marine Corps present to the joint force given your global force integration responsibility. Can you speak to that for a minute?
Yes, sir. And I'll be mindful of the environment that we're in and speak broadly, and thank you for the question. You know, we are having to make some difficult choices to pivot some of the combat capability that we have now to the combat capability that we need in the future. Both services, alongside the Department of the Navy and the Department of the Army, are making those changes in order to provide us with the combat capability and capacity that we need at scale to create the dilemmas that we have to deliver for the joint force and our adversaries. So at this point, you know, we're doing the right pivots, Congressman, to make sure that we have the right depth that we need.
Secretary Hegseth, both of you understand the unique value proposition that the National Guard provides the joint force, having served. And gosh, for a long time, it was just me and Hal Rogers up here as the Guard guys. So it's good to have some company. As we're looking to be efficient with federal dollars, I always kind of believe that the Guard and the reserve component structure in general brought what I called value to the force. That you know, I realize it's probably not at the same level of proficiency that the active duty counterparts might have, but they bring value to the force. And when we need to surge responsibly and quickly, then the Guard and Reserve are certainly at the ready to do that. My question is pretty simple. Can you both commit to ensuring that the National Guard component is resourced and equipped properly to meet not only today's operational demands, but those in the future? And I ask this question having had experience back in the day when the National Guard was more or less a reserve force, and it was only after 9/11 that we began to use the National Guard in a truly operational form. And I thought it did a lot of great things for the Guard. I thought it brought value to the force, and I worry sometimes that we may, you know, pivot back to the time when the National Guard is relegated to more of a reserve structure rather than able to surge with our forces in a moment's need and be able to deliver combat capability and combat service support capability when needed. Can you speak to that, Secretary?
Sir, I think it's an excellent point. It does, the National Guard and Reserves bring great value, not to mention the civilian skills, the additive civilian skills that they bring. Completely recognize the shift that happened after 9/11. I was a part of that, as were many people in the Guard of our generation. I think we're entering an even another phase, especially under President Trump with his focus on the homeland, where the National Guard and Reserves become a critical component of how we secure that homeland and apply those civilian sets across the spectrum. So when you're looking at, say, the Army, for example, what we need in the active Army vis-a-vis the National Guard will not be a reflection of what we need or don't need. It will be a right sizing of where that particular application would be best used. And the National Guard is a huge component of how we see the future, sir.
General Caine.
Sir, you know, the policy makers tell us what size our force should be. What I will commit to you, and by the way, thank you both for your service in the Guard. As a fellow Guardsman, you're legendary in those hallways. What I will commit to you is that I'll make sure that the voice of the Guard is heard at the policy level, pursuant to my job as a chairman.
I yield, Mr. Chairman.
I thank the gentleman. Mr. Case.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Secretary, at the Shangri-La Dialogue in your speech of May 31st, you stated, and I quote, "Here in the Indo-Pacific, our futures are bound together. The prosperity and security of the Indo-Pacific are linked to those of your people." You went on to talk about the benefits from the, quote, "peace and stability that comes with a lasting and strong American presence here in the Indo-Pacific," end quote. Do you believe that the only way to achieve our contributions to peace and security and stability in the Indo-Pacific is through military strength alone?
Sir, certainly not through military strength alone, although military strength is the business that we're in. So we're building partnerships across mill to mill, whether it's the Philippines, Japan, Australia, more actively than any other part of the world, because the application of American strength is not America alone. It's by, with, and through partners who share mutual objectives. And so we are very invested in military-to-military relationships.
So you, as the Secretary of Defense, believe that we need to take a broader approach in the projection of national power, national influence than simply our military. Is that correct?
Well, sir, that's not my job. My job is the military application. So
yes,
others will determine the broader spectrum of that, but it's always useful to have other applications of power as well.
But how others actually do that does impact your job in running our military, right? I mean, your military operations, your military presence, your mill-to-mill relationships that I agree are important, are all going to be impacted by our non-military projection of power, influence, and assistance throughout the Indo-Pacific. Is that correct?
I would just say that from my 2 recent visits to that region, meeting with many of those ministers of defense multiple times, their focus is what capabilities can we share together, interoperability and capabilities that establish deterrence, because the most important message America can still send, and they can still send, is hard power capabilities. What can we project? Where can we project it? As the chairman said, what dilemmas can we create? That's the business that we're in. And so we work with those partners that share common goals, and our militaries are working better together than they ever have, and I think that helps
appreciate your
support
focus
security.
on the military side. That's obviously directly your job, but I'm asking you to think and comment more broadly on our big picture approach to the world. This administration, for example, has proposed to reduce the State Department by $8.3 billion, the Economic Support Fund, the Development Assistance and Democracy Fund, and the Assistance for Eurasia. This administration has illegally sought to destroy the U.S. Agency for International Development, and in its budget request, reduce it significantly down to close to zero. This administration has proposed to reduce the international narcotics control and law enforcement effort by $1.2 billion. This administration has proposed to eliminate the Millennium Challenge Corporation, or not eliminate it, but reduce it by $1 billion, a significant reduction. One of our principal agencies that assists us with meeting the needs of the Indo-Pacific in the infrastructure area, and what I think you would agree are key strategic countries such as Indonesia, such as Kiribati, such as the Philippines, such as the Solomon Islands. This administration has proposed to reduce international organization contributions by 83%. This administration is not following through on commitments that we made to the freely associated states, all of which are strategically critical to this country, to expand veteran services in those 3 countries, Palau, the Federated States of Micronesia, and the Marshall Islands. This administration appears to be slow walking the resurgence and expansion of the Peace Corps throughout the Indo-Pacific. Do you think that that will affect your job in the military space with your relationships with those countries?
No, sir. I would add to that list the elimination of most USAID programs, which I don't hear anything about because a lot of them were wasteful and duplicitous, and I'm glad we got rid of them.
Well, I've had those conversations
as far as
with those
you mentioned
countries.
international organizations, the 83% reduction. Again, I hear nothing about that because
Have
most
you
of those
talked to those
international organizations are not serving U.S. interests,
Mr.
and so we shouldn't
Secretary,
be
have you
funding them
talked to
if they're
those
not
countries
serving
about
U.S.
the
interests.
impact?
So I don't hear from our allies problems about that.
Well, I
because
don't think you're talking to the
those
right
were not
people.
part of their calculus
Yeah,
of American
if you
power.
talk to any one of those countries, they'll tell you that they're deeply concerned with the reduction of non-defense dollars, and it will in fact influence our presence and our contribution to your stated goal of peace and stability and
I think they
security
respect
in
that
the
we're
Indo-Pacific.
reducing waste on programs that aren't actually affecting
Gentleman,
change
time
on the
has
ground.
expired. Mr. Diaz-Ballard.
Thank you, and to 3 of you, thank you. Thanks for being here, and thanks for your service. Mr. Secretary, I have 2 questions. First one is, and you mentioned recruitment at the beginning. During the last 4 years, we got used to just hearing how the recruitment was not doing well, and it was just the new reality. And then all of a sudden, that reality has changed. If you can comment on why that reality? I think a lot of us know, but if you could talk to us a little bit about this new reality, which you don't hear much about in the press, about how that has changed dramatically. Question number one. Question number two is, a number of years ago, Southcom was moved from Panama to South Florida. There's a lot of reasons for that move. It was to get it because it was in close proximity with others like Jayada South, Special Operations Command South and Homestead, Joint Task Force Guantanamo, the Joint Task Force Bravo in Honduras, the U.S. Coast Guard 7th District, which is the busiest district in the entire country, but also because in South Florida you have this multicultural, multilingual community, and as you know, Southcom deals with multiple countries, 40 different languages, and so it was not just a cost savings potentially, but it was also made a lot of sense. I believe that continues to be the case. Nothing has changed. If anything, what's changed is that the Western Hemisphere has gotten a lot more dangerous. And obviously we have Iranian influence, Russian influence, Chinese influence. I'm very grateful, Mr. Secretary, I don't know how much you had to do with that, of the President's change in attitude on no longer appeasing enemies of the United States in the Southern Hemisphere, whether it's Venezuela or Cuba. But again, there goes the importance of having Southcom where it is. And I just would like your thoughts, if you've had an opportunity to look at that, because it was moved from Panama. It just wasn't in South Florida for the heck of it. It was a decision made. It was the right decision. It's proven to be the right decision. So 2 questions, if you can answer them, I'd love to hear it.
Well, sir, thank you for the question about recruiting. What changed is a commander-in-chief that America's young people believe in. President Trump was elected in November, inaugurated in January, and at first I called it the Trump bump, but then it became clear that's not enough. This is a tsunami of support amongst young Americans who want to serve under a president who they know has their back, who will fund them properly, who will not use them unnecessarily, and will make sure they are part of deterrence for the country with a focus, first and foremost, on the homeland, then deterring strengths and making sure our allies step up and carry more of the burden. So you've got a historic surge in the Army, the Marine Corps, Navy, Air Force, you name it. Americans are responding because the president says a new spirit, and he's right, and you can feel it in the ranks. You go out to formations, you talk to men and women on the border, they believe in what they're doing in securing that southern border. You talk to them across the world, they're enthused about this new administration and its leadership. So it's President Trump, sir. And then as far as Southcom, it is President Trump's focus on our hemisphere has in many ways reinvigorated the mission of Southcom and the recognition of securing American interests, but also pushing back Chinese malign influence. Panama is a great example of that, but across Central and South America. So Southcom is right where it is. We're grateful for the great work that they do. I've had an opportunity to spend a lot of time with them and their commander, and we work by, with, and through a lot of allies.
Mr. Secretary, I'm a little confused. Are you telling me that the folks that are now voting with their commitment to the country are not upset that they're not able to use different pronouns? Is that not a priority for the folks that are now signing up for our military?
Well, sir, if they wanted to get a woke indoctrination, they could just go to college. Instead, they're joining the military, where we're focused on the basics. We know men are men, women are women, standards will be high, and we're getting rid of the distractions, the ideologies, the politicization that was in our ranks, so that soldiers, men and women, can do their jobs on behalf of the nation. I think that's all that American people, all the people who want to serve want, is that clarity and that support, and President Trump is giving it.
Well, Mr. Secretary, I would also add that I think having you there has made it very clear what the attitude is. And I will tell you, to me, it's really, really refreshing, and I thank you all.
I appreciate
yield
it.
back.
Thank you, sir.
Yields back, Ms. Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here. Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to submit to the record an article from the New York Times entitled, "China's Chokehold on This Obscure Mineral Threatens the West Military."
Without objection.
Mr. Secretary, this article that I just referenced outlines how the Department of Defense paid an Australian firm 10 times more than it paid MP Materials, an American firm, to onshore the full ecosystem of rare earth production. MP, the largest U.S. rare earth producer, has invested $1 billion of its own capital since 2020 and employs more than 800 Americans. Yet it was undercut by an Australian firm that never even broke ground in the U.S. MP Materials is ready to install their samarium processing equipment and help the U.S. combat China's export controls. And I want to note that China produces the entire world's supply of this obscure rare earth metal that is used almost entirely in military applications because of its use in heat resistance magnets. So my question is, in accordance with the administration's America First agenda, do you agree that subsidies should first support U.S. companies already investing, hiring, and paying taxes in the United States? And can I have your support in ensuring that the department critical mineral policies will align with this goal?
Ma'am, it's an excellent question. It's something we have been very focused on. In fact, my deputy secretary, it is his number one, is ensuring that sourcing of critical minerals, whether they're heavy or light rare earths, are sourced reliably in America first, and if not, then amongst allies. I won't reveal or talk about more than that in a setting like this, because we have reserves and we have capabilities, but at the same time, we have to aggressively work. And MP Materials, Mountain Pass, is a great example of a place where we can partner with industry. But what does China do? You know this. China undercuts the market intentionally to try to corner the market, and we have to account for that in the things that we support.
So the answer is yes, I can have your support. Thank you. I also want to turn now to the collaborative combat aircraft. I represent Las Vegas, Nevada, so we're very excited that the department will base the CCA unit at Creech Air Force Base, which is the center of excellence in uncrewed aircraft systems. And I want to make sure that the department has the resources they need to make this program a success. Last year, the Air Force had to shift $383 million to the CCA program, plussing it up by 60%. Can you assure me that your budget request will fully fund the CCA program this year?
Ma'am, it does fully fund the CCA, and we believe in the collaborative combat aircraft, the loyal wingman concept, this idea that you project power more robustly through autonomous, semi-autonomous systems that that amplify our lethal effect. So yes.
Thank you. Great. Can you give me an update on the first flight and the production decision for Increment 1, and are we on track for the flight? When will it be? And finally, when do you anticipate the production decision this fiscal year? What quantity of aircraft will we procure? How many vendors will you award? And what factors are you considering?
Bryn, feel free to chime in. You're talking about the CCA still,
yes.
Correct? My understanding is later this year on the flight.
We know a date?
As far as I don't know the exact date, ma'am, but Bryn, you might know.
Yes, ma'am. We can get back to you on the specific date. It should be this fiscal year. And for our budget request, it's $804 million for the collaborative combat aircraft.
Great. Thank you. How much time do I have left? I'll just, also, can you then outline what is planned for Increment 2? What type of capabilities can we expect, and what timeline and critical milestones?
We'll get back to you on that one.
Okay, thank you. With that, I yield.
Thank you, gentlelady. And I'd just like to point out that Mountain Pass is in San Bernardino County, California. So one of the only critical mineral mines left in the United States. So hopefully that'll change soon. Mr. Joyce. Nope. Mr. Elzey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sergeant Major Troy Black. Thank you for all your years of service. You've been serving this country since Ronald Reagan was president in 1988. You leave behind a distinguished career in uniform, wearing that uniform, service to your country. You have served as the senior enlisted advisor to the Commandant of the Marine Corps and now to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And I think, but what will be most missed, if you didn't know this about him, in 2010, he received the Bronze Star with a Combat V for running across several hundred yards of mine-in-place fields to pick up a fallen Marine. You're a Marine's Marine. You will be missed. You are the pride of Louisville, Kentucky. And I'd like to say, on behalf of this committee and our nation, we're grateful, and fair winds and following seas. Secretary Hegseth and General Caine and Ms. McDonald, glad you're here. I'm personally grateful for your service to our country and for sharing your valuable time with us today. Bring a non-traditional perspective to your tenure as chairman, having been a guardsman and an entrepreneur. Thank you for saying yes once again when called to serve, and also distinguished Flying Cross and 2 Bronze Stars. You didn't get that by sitting behind a desk. You were a fighter pilot's fighter pilot. You helped the plan to bring down Scuds in 2003. So thank you for your service. And Mr. Secretary, I want to salute you for your leadership and action-oriented approach at the Pentagon. You've created a sense of urgency that General Caine refers to in his testimony, and back to the issue of what we're not talking about today, and it's recruitment. Because in this family business, all volunteer force of ours, parents and their children who want to serve our country are now no longer afraid to sign up for fear of them being misused or not having their merit being rewarded appropriately. So thank you. You've also highlighted our service academies in that effort. Mr. Womack and I both serve on the boards of visitors at West Point and the Naval Academy, so thank you. I also appreciate your guidance on using commercial solutions in acquisition and on reducing the inflation that we have seen in the numbers of flag and general officers. And I think we can make the Pentagon a triangle pretty quick. There are more Navy admirals in the various systems commands than there are in the fleet. That's too many flags in D.C. and not enough at the waterfront or on the flight line. But speaking of acquisition, I want to turn to the plans of a 6th-generation fighter. General Caine, in his prepared statement, states that the F-47 will continue to ensure U.S. air dominance for decades. I'm a fervent supporter of not only F-47, but whatever the FAXX is going to turn out to be. And I want to make that clear to everyone listening. Our Navy, our Joint Force, and our future combatant commanders need the Navy's 6th-generation fighter, the FAXX. Relying only on the Air Force's 6th-generation fighter does not solve our air superiority challenge, because whether they're coming from Guam or Diego Garcia, the DIMPs are already set and the missiles are already guided. It's a non-moving target. An aircraft carrier moves its DIMP every 30 seconds. So we can't do either of those with only the Air Force's plan by. So we either want to win or we don't, and I know we want to win. We have to do it with the FAXX. And a 3-year delay is a de facto cancellation and a win for China, and they are watching. And don't take my word for it. They're conducting unrestricted warfare against us right now. And if you read the 36 guidelines from the 6th century, and they talk about how do you defeat an enemy, or Sun Tzu, you defeat them at home with fentanyl, by taking out our military members before they can even join, 70,000 a year. They are being successful in how they're doing unrestricted warfare, and that's exactly what they're conducting. They're also showing us their 6th-generation aircraft right now, and there's at least 3 that we know they're working on. We can't give the field to them and say 5th generation is okay for the Navy, but it's not for the Air Force. We must have both. So several well-informed, well-respected leaders shared with us the importance of having both the Air Force and the Navy 6th-generation fighters, Admiral Paparo, General Alvin, and Admiral Kilby, acting CNO. I'm not going to put you all on the spot, but I just want to make it clear. If you'd like to address it, you may. I'm just putting it that it's that important to me. So what troubles me about the Pentagon needing to be a triangle now is that one of my favorite movies is Office Space. Remember Milton? Milton down there with the swing line. We're not really sure what he did, but he sure made a lot of trouble for everybody. I think we have a lot of Miltons in the systems commands and down there in the Pentagon, maybe at Cape, who are telling you that we can't do something when we absolutely can. They need to go. So let's get rid of Milton. Let's invest in this generational investment. I'd like to thank Chairman Calvert, Chairman Calvert, for his investment in the FAXX and the bill, and present to this subcommittee later today. So thank y'all. Appreciate it.
Okay, go Navy. Mr. Morelli, you're recognized.
Thank you, General, Chairman. I'm grateful for your service and grateful, Mr. Chairman, for the hearing today. I don't want to pile on, Mr. Secretary, and I'm brand new to this subcommittee, but I will say that in the same way we wouldn't go into battle without knowing the number of troops, our weaponry, the number of armaments, equipment, supplies. It's really almost impossible for this committee to do its job without details from the president, from the department on a budget request. So I wonder whether or not we could get a commitment from all of you to come back before the committee when the full, the president's budget request has been delivered, so you can answer questions in detail about it.
Certainly, we'll make sure you get those details, Congressman.
Well, getting the details is important, but also being able to answer questions about those details and what they mean, I think would be helpful. So obviously, you know, this is the chairman's decision, but I would ask you to consider coming back before the committee when the president's budget request is submitted to us, so we could get your sense of the various items in it. I want to go back to a topic I think Ms. Capter raised, which is Ukraine, and I really appreciate your comment that when you referred to partners on our side like Ukraine, so I'm glad we still consider them partners on our side. Last week, the Ukraine Defense Contact Group met in Brussels. I know we did not attend, you did not attend, and I don't believe you appeared even remotely, but that was a meeting in which allies coordinated billions in aid to help Ukraine. We're talking about funding right now without a budget, without a plan to sustain U.S. support in what I consider the most serious conflict in Europe in a generation. So can you at least give us a sense, Ms. Secretary, of the presidential drawdown aid authorized through January 20th? Do you know how much has actually been delivered? Just the presidential authority that was given through January 20th when the new administration took over. Okay, do you have a sense of the how much has actually been delivered?
I don't know the exact amount that has been delivered, but we're actively monitoring it, as well as the lifespan of certain munitions, what munitions remain critical for us, critical for them, critical for allies like Israel. We're paying very close attention to that.
Okay, and you can give us a detailed, thank you. Do you know whether the department or the president is prepared to ask for funding for the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, and at what level?
It is a reduction in this budget. As you know, this administration takes a very different view of that conflict. We believe a negotiated peaceful settlement is in the best interest of both parties and our nation's interest, especially with all the competing interests around the globe. I don't think the word victory has been well defined, or the path to it. And as a result, a path to peace that stops the killing and the carnage is something that President Trump is very invested in.
Well, look, I would certainly, I think I would define victory as making sure incursions, illegal incursions by the Russian Federation into Ukraine, which is a sovereign nation, would be a victory, but I'll leave that aside. I want to just touch briefly on, with the limited time I have, the president's announced $175 billion Golden Dome. It's been talked about. I know that what has been talked about, we understand that reconciliation includes a $25 billion down payment. We haven't really received much in clarity on the specifics. Can you tell me what the $25 billion will be used for?
Excuse me. There are many specifics that are not fitting for this setting. We're happy to get you at the appropriate level the specifics you request. But what we've done is we've built out the entire understanding of what the architecture would look like, ensuring it includes existing capabilities that can be fielded rapidly. As President Trump has made the case, we need this now, not conceptually in the future. You know, we had SDI under Ronald Reagan, which was a concept. We've fast forward to the ability to deliver these things, and the American people deserve that kind of protection. So multiple layers for multiple different types of threats, coordinated with sensors, both on the ground and in space at other layers. And we've got one of our best Space Force generals fully focused on that project in General Gutlein, who has a background in understanding those types of architectures. So we've pulled the program up to the Office of Secretary of Defense to make sure it's monitored on a monthly basis.
Can you tell us what the appropriations request will be for Golden Dome in the 26th fiscal year?
Well, the gentleman could,
go ahead,
Bren, excuse me, Ms. McDonald, you can get back to us on that and for the record, and we would appreciate that. Mr. Fleischman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Want to welcome Secretary Hegseth, General Caine, and Mrs. McDonald. Thank you. This has been an outstanding hearing. Let me just say this. The world is a dangerous place. The nation is a dangerous place. Heartfelt thank you to each and every one of you officers stepping up and for doing an exemplary job. Thank you so much. As most of you know, I represent the 3rd District of Tennessee. That's the Great Oak Ridge Reservation, birthplace of the Manhattan Project. In addition to serving on this prestigious subcommittee, I'm the chairman of the Energy and Water Subcommittee, which has the NNSA. I'm deeply involved in the recapitalization and modernization of our nation's nuclear deterrent. It will come as no surprise I have concerns about both our progress and posture. Our progress is a concern as we are recapitalizing the entire nuclear deterrent all at once. Meanwhile, Russia has recapitalized its triad minus some bombers, and China is rapidly expanding its numbers and fielding a triad. Of course, there's also North Korea and the looming prospect of a nuclear Iran. As we focus more on the Pacific, our post-Cold War posture is a concern due to the lack of in-theater non-strategic nuclear weapons. This creates a deeply worrying capability gap in the most critical theater. I'll ask my questions and ask for your answers then. First, Secretary Hegseth, given this troubling strategic threat picture, what is your outlook on the current pace and scope of nuclear recapitalization? And then General Caine, what are your ideas to fill this non-strategic nuclear capability gap in the Pacific? Are there any ways Congress can better support the department's efforts to meet these increasingly tight deadlines? And I'll listen to your responses. Thank you.
Sir, thank you. First, if I would just take liberty, both the chairman and I have taken up almost all the oxygen from Bryn McDonald here. I would just take issue with the characterization that we have not delivered a budget and we don't have details and we're not delivering on it. She and her team have done a fantastic job of working as rapidly and as detailed as possible to deliver what we feel very confidently is a robust, detailed delivery of the president's agenda for FY26. So Bryn, thank you for the work that you're doing and all the details and focus on that have come through. And that the nuclear triad is certainly a part of it. NC3, every single aspect of that. Sentinel with the Nunn-McCurdy breach has to, we are taking a very hard look at that while fully funding it. Columbia class, critical. B-21, which for the most part has been a success story, but needs to be continually monitored as any major platform does. And then the Slickamen as well, investing in that capability, considering the advantages we have on the submarine side. So we are fully funding, in fact, even more so in most cases, that capitalization and modernization, which we have to, considering what our adversaries are up to.
Thank you, sir.
Sure, I just echo the Secretary's comments about non-strategic nuclear weapons, Slickaman and the others. And I think it really, for me, centers around 4 C's that we got to do across the enterprise. Change the culture to get after it faster. That's the first one. We got to create competition across the continuum in the defense and national industrial base. We need to buy better contracts and get greater capacity. So no ads other than that, Congressman.
Thank you. So if I may, you all feel reasonably comfortable with the way that we're modernizing our triad?
Well, sir, I'm not comfortable with the way the Sentinel upgrade had been happening.
Understood.
With the recognition that it is behind and can't be. And so we're getting at dynamic ways to address that. Different alternatives. Our Deputy Secretary and his team very focused along with Bryn. What do we fund? Why do we fund it? How do we look at new ways to do it? Because the way we've approached it so far has gotten us nowhere fast.
Thank you. By the way, I welcome you all to visit Oak Ridge at any time. Thank you, and I'll yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Mr. Aguilar.
Thank you, Chairman General Calvert.
That's right.
Thanks to the witnesses for being here.
That's okay, Private. Go ahead.
The clock's still moving, Mr. Secretary, I want to express my severe concern with the deployment of the National Guard in Los Angeles without consultation of the state of California. There have been photographs that have shown these troops sleeping on the floor and have not been provided fuel, food, or water by DOD. How long will this deployment last, and why were we unprepared to provide them basic necessities such as food and water?
commanders and troops on the field are very well prepared, sir. They responded incredibly rapidly to a deteriorating situation with equipment and capabilities. We have made sure from the top down, as a Secretary of Defense who's been in a unit holding riot shields outside the White House during the chaos of the summer of 2020, I know what it's like to be immediately deployed into a situation like that. There are moments where you make do as best you can temporarily, but we are ensuring they're housed, fed, water capabilities in real time from my office, because I care that much about the California Guard and the Marines and the men and women who are supporting our ICE agents on the ground.
You should check
It's
with your
true
office.
every day, and that's a disingenuous attack that misrepresents how much we care about our troops and what they're doing to defend ICE agents. I'm not going to take the fact that we don't care about the troops. Nobody cares more about the troops at the top than this Secretary and the Chairman and our
How long
department.
will the deployment last?
We stated very publicly that it's 60 days because we want to ensure that those rioters, looters, and thugs on the other side assaulting our police officers know that we're not going anywhere. We're here to maintain the peace on behalf of law enforcement officers in Los Angeles, which Gavin Newsom won't do.
What is the estimated cost of the deployment for the Guard and the Marines to LA, and where's this funding coming from? Will it be coming from quality of life programs that affect our service members or our families? If you want to wait till I finish.
Before I hand it to
such as updates, housing and barracks.
Before I hand it to Bryn, the insinuation that we're pulling money from housing and barracks in order to fund this is disingenuous and incorrect.
I'm just asking.
Bryn can give you the numbers, absolutely.
So the current estimated cost is $134 million, which is largely just TDY costs, travel, housing, food, etc.
Where's it coming from? That's the cost, but where's it coming from?
Out of their O&M accounts.
With the most recent deployment of the Marines, Mr. Secretary, what's the justification for using the military for civilian law enforcement purposes in LA? Why are you sending war fighters to cities to interact with civilians?
Every American citizen deserves to live in a community that's safe, and ICE agents need to be able to do their job. They're being attacked for doing their job, which is deporting illegal criminals. That should happen in any city, Minneapolis or Los Angeles. And if they're attacked, that's lawless, and President Trump believes in law and order. So he has every authority, and he has done mobilizing National Guard or active duty troops under U.S. code to protect federal agents in their job, which is exactly what we're doing, and we're proud to do it. We're proud to do it.
10 U.S.C. of the U.S. Code 12406 as a legal basis that the president used cites 3 examples and circumstances for the Guard. Invasion by a foreign nation, rebellion or dangerous rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States, or the president is unable with regular forces to execute the laws of the United States. Which authority is triggered here to justify the use?
I don't know, you just read it yourself and people can listen themselves, but it sounds like all 3 to me. If you've got millions of illegals and you don't know where they're coming from, they're waving flags from foreign countries and assaulting police officers and law enforcement officers, that's the problem.
The laws of the United States?
No, the governor of California is unable to execute the laws of the United States.
The president, you said all 3
governor
apply.
of the California has failed to protect his people, along with the mayor of Los Angeles, and so President Trump has said he will protect our agents, and our Guard and Marines are proud to do it.
The law also says, Mr. Secretary, that the orders for these purposes shall be issued through governors of the states.
You and I both know that President Trump has all the authorities necessary, and thankfully he's willing to do it on behalf of the citizens of Los Angeles, on behalf of our ICE agents, and behalf of our country.
We've also pulled $1 billion for the border as well. So this just goes into the same fund, 134. What did
Congressman, what's the
134 million? I was asking Ms. McDonald.
Okay.
134 million goes on top of the billion that's been pulled for the border.
So the funding that was pulled for this year was largely in FSRM, and in this budget, we're actually looking to plus that funding back up to backfill that for our troops and for their families.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank the gentleman. Mr. Valadeo.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Secretary. Thank you, General. Thank you, Ms. McDonald, for being here. I know a lot of things have been asked already, and since I'm the bottom of the totem pole on seniority here, all my questions get asked first, so I'll hit one that's a little closer to home for me. Secretary Hegseth, thank you for addressing the challenges military families have faced under the Global Households Good contract. I've heard directly from my constituents about these issues, so I appreciate your direct, I've heard directly from my constituents, so I appreciate your directive to review the contract and raise rates during peak PCS season. Can you commit to continuing to work with us to monitor the impact and make further improvements as needed?
Sir, I appreciate the question. We heard as well the worsening PCS change of station process that military members are facing, that the new attempt to reform it had failed, and we got that word quickly. And when we did that, we didn't try to excuse it away or cover it up. We immediately confronted the process. We fired the person in charge, and we said, we're gonna, in this peak season, plus up the amount we reimburse so that families are reimbursed properly. And we use both systems, the legacy system and the new system, to ensure their needs are actually met. At the end of that process, we will then do a thorough reform of how it actually happens. It hasn't worked for far too long. Everybody knows it. It's about time we take a look at the process. I mean, think about the things we can deliver in real time to people in far-flung places across the country and across the world. And you can't reliably move an E4 from California to New York and ensure that the goods get there within a week. That's a failure of the United States military, and we're going to fix it.
I appreciate that. Next question, Secretary Hegseth. With rising tensions involving Russia and China, what steps is the department taking to ensure our defense industrial base can meet surge demands across multiple theaters? Are we seeing adequate investments in munition stockpiles, logistics, and supply chain resilience, in particular when it comes to critical inputs like rare earths and other essential minerals?
I would just echo exactly what you said. It's because of the urgency of the moment, the reality of the threats we face, the threats that are joining forces in sort of an anti-American, anti-Western bloc, are developing capabilities that they're fielding and trying in other theaters to refine them. The munitions that we have, where we use them, how we procure them, and what we use them for, the supply chain that goes into the materials on those munitions. Unfortunately, we inherited a department that didn't pay enough attention to that seemed to think sourcing from adversaries was going to be okay in a time of contingency or crisis. We are changing that. Or content to make the same munitions we've had in the past because, well, they were made in somebody's district or they were made in somebody's state, and that's the way we always do it. We're not doing that anymore. We're making the tough calls based on the threats we face, matching it to the capabilities, and I'm happy to sit in front of every and any committee and explain why we're doing it, because it's about time. It's about time we challenge that, and that doesn't mean we don't want input. We do want input. We know why people are invested in certain programs and certain systems, but it's our job to make the tough calls, and President Trump has asked us to do that. I'm willing to make the tough calls, whether it's on personnel, systems, platforms, modernization, and partner with folks like General Caine and the Joint Staff who've been with us in every step of the way.
I appreciate that. So we got a little more time. So Secretary Hegseth, as the department looks to stay ahead of near-peer threats, will the defense budget continue to invest in hypersonic weapons and defense systems, including unmanned, high-Mach, and next-gen aviation technologies?
The answer is yes. In a way, unfortunately, the previous administration did not. So if you're looking at long-range fires, autonomous systems, hypersonics are part of warfare of the long-range drones, a part of the warfare of the future. That means we're investing in them to be better than our adversaries. Not accept the fact that we have matching capabilities, but what more can we do to enhance those so we're ahead of the curve? Because when President Trump says we have the best platforms, the best systems, the best fighters, the best ships, the best vehicles, he means it, and we mean business on it, and we're going to deliver it.
All right, thank you. And I've got 30 seconds. So General Caine, if Congress had $1 extra to invest today most effectively to strengthen our deterrence posture against China, Russia, and threats in the Middle East, where should it go? 20 seconds.
Wow, I'm gonna take 19 of those, Congressman. Probably in munitions. I don't know how much we'd buy for $1, but I'd want to make sure that the joint force is properly armed at scale at the tactical edge, and the youngsters that volunteer to serve have what they need.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Chairman. I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Mr. Joyce.
There we go. Thank you, Chairman. Secretary, everybody, I appreciate we had to go out to you wouldn't believe this, but there are other hearings taking place. So I went over to bug Secretary Turner and now came back. So it's your turn. Secretary Hegseth, your April 30th memo on Army transportation and acquisition reform directs the Army to expand prepositioned stocks of equipment to the Indo-Pacific. I expect we would need to enhance our industrial base capacity to support this effort. Can you discuss the importance of increasing prepositioned stocks in the Indo-Pacific and how this affects the Army's resources for FY26?
It's a great question because it marries up two things that need to be linked and synced and often aren't, right? The capabilities that we have in the priority theater and where we preposition those capabilities. So my job exists on multiple axes of that. One is working with allies and partners to make sure we have places to preposition them, many of which we can't talk about here today, but in the event of a contingency, we can't be relying on a supply chain that reaches all the way back to the States or even to Hawaii or even to Guam. You need to recognize the prepositioning of stocks. But then you have to have those stocks, and they have to be the relevant ones for the systems that you're deploying, and you need a defense industrial base to deliver on that, which is why we've made historic investments in munitions, focusing on priority munitions that would be applied in our priority theater, with a recognition that every munition we spend somewhere else, and I say that as someone who, very proudly, we conducted a very successful freedom of navigation campaign against the Houthis to ensure that our ships don't, and by the way, 2 of our ships transited the BAM successfully and the ceasefire held very recently. So doesn't mean you don't expend munitions, you judiciously expend them with an understanding that you have to safeguard others for future fights and prepositioning and then invest in your industrial base. And I think that's why you see a budget with a 13% increase. 13% increase in a defense budget is significant and allows us to both invest in the president's priorities and fast-track munitions that we're going to need.
For a guy chairing a committee that has to cut his by 57%, I can tell you getting a plus 13 is a lucky day. Chairman Caine, our forces face growing challenges sustaining operations across contested environments, particularly in the Indo-Pacific. China is investing in capabilities designed to disrupt supply lines, access to forward operating bases, and target critical logistic nodes. What steps are you taking to strengthen contested logistics capabilities, and what investments can Congress make to ensure that you have operational resilience?
Well, Congressman, thanks for the question. You know, history tells us that professionals talk about logistics, and that's what was the big differentiator between us and our adversaries in World War II, was really the logistics power. You know, our teammates within the Joint Force are looking carefully at this right now, and as we look at the adversaries' threat arrays that they have and our ability to defeat them and move the combat capacity that we need to through those difficult places is a key part of that. I don't have a specific number for you, but what I'll commit is, as we think through what contested logistics looks like, as we think through what forward supply points on the first and second island chain might look like, we'll stay close with the committee to make sure that we're communicating early, often, and always about what our needs are.
I certainly appreciate that, and I throw out that having a small Air Force Reserve airport in Youngstown, Ohio area.
Some great C-130Js up there,
Thank you.
Congressman. Yeah.
Appreciate the help on our fire department for the new inventory we got. But the old stuff we had there, you had maybe 8 planes. You were cannibalizing 3 to feed the 5 because we didn't have parts and storage and those type of things. And I think that's has played out in other areas for us as well. And we need to not only make sure we have the manufacturing industrial base, but we also have the ability to have the parts and inventory on to keep all those things online, or we have to remove them from service.
Yes, sir. I know General Alvin and the team at the Air Force is looking hard at that too, to make sure that we've got the right stuff on the shelf prior to that we need, not just in the C-130 community, but the other airframes within the Air Force, and frankly the Joint Force. Parts are always going to be a driver, and I'm really encouraged by the innovation that's happening to look at things like additive manufacturing, where we get a hold of the specs from companies like Lockheed and others and can just 3D print right on the spot of the requirement.
Those have to be in any procurement you do from now on.
Yes, sir. I think so, sir. It's, you know, the force of the future will fix on the spot, so they'll need to be able to have the parts right there. And as we look at mission command and delegating authorities and responsibilities to our younger commanders and you know, complex command and control problems, part of that is going to be the ability to sustain our force out there at the edge.
Thank you very much, General.
Yes, sir.
I yield back.
And thinking of logistics, it made me think at, what was it, General Marshall, who went out in the 30s and met with a young lieutenant colonel and said it's the best logistics officer I've ever met. And that was General Eisenhower. 3 years later, he was a 4-star general. So wars, logistics are important. Mr. Anderholt, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks everyone for being here today, this morning. And as we wrap up the hearing today, let me say the Golden Dome Initiative represents, in my opinion, a substantial investment in our national security, and I credit this administration in pursuing this bold project, and I share your ambition for it. So thank you for moving forward on that. I want to follow up with from my colleague from New York. The president has said that he has chosen an option that will total $175 billion. Can you confirm that number, and when do you hope to make this system of systems operational?
I'll have Bryn confirm it, but our belief is that 175 is the totality, that this is the initial investment, but that a lot of the investment will eventually be in systems, some of which are already in production. We'll need to ramp up the production of them because the president has charged us with having this mission capable by the end of his term. So this is not something that's futuristic. This is not something that will happen in some distant future based on some technology we don't yet have or can't field. Our approach to Golden Dome will be making sure we can procure existing layers that can talk to each other with new layers on top, because this is a layered system, as was mentioned, to include drones as well in partnership with the services. So can you confirm that, Bryn?
Yes, sir. Nothing to add. That's all accurate. And we're still planning towards what the final number is, but the $24.8 billion we're requesting this year is that down payment on the near-term capabilities that we're looking at as part of the architecture.
Okay, thank you. Let me switch over, and I'd like to get your thoughts on the AUKUS partnership. Not merely as a cornerstone for our Indo-Pacific defense strategy, but also as an opportunity for our defense industrial base. In fact, we've heard from a lot of Australian and UK businesses who are ready, willing, and able to move production to the U.S. given the new regulatory framework under Pillar 2. Britain and Australia set the standard for defense cooperation, bringing real capability and firepower to the fight. Can you preview how this administration intends to fund Pillar 2 efforts to develop and field joint capabilities between all three partners?
It's a great question, sir. I've spent a great deal of time with both Minister of Defense Marles from Australia, as well as Secretary of Defense Healy from the UK, to really get our arms around what would be mutually beneficial in this trilateral arrangement. So there's the recognition with Australia in Pillar 1 that they're investing in our defense industrial base. We want to provide them capabilities. We want to make sure those capabilities are part of how they use them with submarines, but also how they integrate with us as allies. In Pillar 2, we don't want to rely just on the architecture of the previous administration. We're looking at sort of the opportunity for a signature program or programs we can work on together that benefit all three, that create processes or procurement opportunities of systems we need for future fights. And we've had, in fact, as recently as last week, I spoke with Secretary Healy about that, and we're looking for those 1 or 2 signature programs. We've got a menu of options. We're at the point where we'll get to right-sizing it and determining it.
And you feel at this point that things are on track, and you're...
That's what we're monitoring, especially in Pillar 1, sir, to make sure that expectations are properly set, so that we're not missing deadlines or expectations are shifted in the wrong direction. So we're having honest conversations with our allies, like we should, with a recognition that by investing in each other in that defense industrial base, we can have a multiplying effect.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, gentlemen. Ms. McCollum, any closing statement?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So to Mr. Aguilar's question, and Ms. McDonald, you were helping to fill in the blanks. The money's coming from FSRM, and that's about a 25% cut to that budget to fill on what's happening on the border and now what's happening in Los Angeles. If you could give us the details of what's not going to happen in that account because of that, that would be fabulous. We might want to look and see if we prioritize things in next year's budget to make sure that they're covered. Mr. Secretary, the top line on the budget before us is $830 billion. It is not $901 billion. It's just not. That's the number we have to work with. You can talk about an increase. You've got a lot of things baked in. Hopefully that goes in reconciliation, $6 billion for revitalizing shipyards, 3.5 for F-47s, 25 for Golden Dome, but that's all in reconciliation. And we can't include that in any of our planning. And that's why we are so concerned about getting the money outbreaks in front of this committee. And I'll give you an example. The Navy, their J-books, where they break everything down, I know you're really familiar with them. We had 30 of them in front of us when we were getting ready to do our appropriation last time. We have 0 in front of us this time. So, you know, Mr. Secretary, I know, I believe, honestly believe you want to provide the information, but time is of the essence because this committee wants to do its best work together, both Democrats and Republicans, to make sure the women who serve in our armed forces have the equipment that they need to do the missions that they're assigned to and come home safely because we honor their service and their commitment. Get us the information. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
I thank the gentlelady, and I just make where we're going to agree that we need some more detailed information. We're going to go ahead and we're going to go upstairs here and do the subcommittee mark, but then we're later this week we're going to do the full committee mark on this bill. The Senate is pushing off doing their appropriation bills in general until after reconciliation passes because they want to incorporate that. But we don't have the luxury of time. We'll just have to work out the differences we have in conference. But it's hard for us to do our job without the J-books, without the detailed information, and I know you know that. And so you might talk to your friends at OMB, and if OMB has any friends, I don't know if they do, but and see if they can get this going for us because it'd be very helpful. With that, Mr. Secretary, thank you. Chairman, thank you. And Ms. McDonald, thank you. We appreciate all of you being here today. We are adjourned.
Thank you.